Pastor Sean Myers, and I believe that faith influences everything. No matter what we are looking at, what we are hearing, what we are doing, how we see God is going to change how we see everything around us. How we hear the music that we hear on the radio. How we do everything. So, what we're doing throughout this whole series is taking different parts of our life, different things that we experience, especially the songs that we hear, and talk about how we can experience God in everything. So if you like this kind of content, if you think it's valuable for your life, go ahead and hit subscribe down below. And if there's any song that we talk about, leave a comment below. Today's actually is a suggestion, rather a challenge, given to me by one of our youth, Perry Chris. And his challenge to me was to take Drake's God's Plan and see it through God's eyes. Or at least, how we can see it in the eyes of faith. I believe he thought he had stumped me on this one, but I'm going to try a little bit harder. So with Drake, here we have someone who's writing a song on multiple different levels, of course, and some of it can seem pretty obvious. So here we're talking about God's plan, right? Now I believe, from reading all the lyrics and such, that for part of that he is actually talking about God, the one who made him, and about his sense of calling and who he is meant to be. In his eyes, he sees God's plan for his life to be a successful rap star. I think he's done fairly well. I know this because I've actually heard of him. Anyway, our sense of call can be completely different. A lot of times we see calling as something that happens to a pastor. Something that says, here is how I want you to live in this very religious way. But the reality is that God calls us all to very different things. For me, it was being called to being a pastor. Also being called to being a husband and a father. For Drake, his calling was to be who he is. And he's doing it pretty dang well. So the question becomes, what is God's plan for you? What is God's calling for you? What are you being called to be? Who are you being called to serve? Another part of this as well, though, is this whole idea of God's plan for us. The idea of a plan seems to be that God has these very little structured waypoints on how our life is going to be lived out. That God has decided beforehand every little step along the way. And that actually is a bit troublesome, if you think about it. That turns all into little puppets in a show. So I don't believe that God actually has a set plan a plan that is step by step by step. But rather, God does have a purpose for us. God has a purpose for us that we can live into, that we can experience, that we can begin to see God's light and God's hope through what we do. And that purpose, when we are working and living our lives according to it, makes things actually go a bit easier. We don't start listening to the critics as much. We don't fail. Actually, no, we do fail. We will fall flat on our faces at times, and people will be convinced that we are messing up. But yet it gives us the courage and the hope to move forward. That anything that seems like a failure turns into just a bump along the way that helps us to see and experience our purpose even more. And also gives us the permission then to go away from our purpose. To explore different ways of being. And we find that those ways are even harder on us. And we keep being called back to that purpose that God has for us. So do we have an exact plan? Well, no. We have a purpose. As for Drake, he does have a bit of an ego in this too. Now you could ask yourself, is it that Drake is talking about God, or is Drake singing about how he himself will one day be a God, a G-O-D? Well, as we do in the Lutheran Church far too often at times for people's liking, The answer for an either or is yes. Drake's hope in this as well is that he will achieve fame. He will achieve respect. He will be honored for the gifts that he has. Is this completely righteous in all that it is? Well, it's a bit self-righteous, but it's also very human. And that's something we live with and deal with all the time. At what point can we let go of our egos and let God be the one who is, as opposed to us trying to make God into ourselves? One point in the song also speaks about respect for one another, about seeing each other as more than just ways to get something for ourselves. This is the line where he talks about, "Don't call me at 6 a.m. for a cuddle." Well, he's saying, don't give me a booty call. I'm worth a lot more than that, and kind of so are you. We're not just what we can do for each other. We are people. We are beloved children of God. Let's see each other in a better way than that. Throughout the song, he also talks about the darkness that can happen in our lives. He talks about his friend Fifth, who died. Well, he just died, but who was killed. And yet, that's a big turning point in people's lives. It's in those moments we can make a decision, which is that are we going to cling on to the despair of that, and to the darkness of the world, and how ourselves be dragged down, or we begin to see hope, or we begin to see light, or we begin to see this world in a better way. And it seems that while he holds on to the memory of his friend, he also acknowledges that there is still hope. That we all are not all going to make it to the full life that we're hoping for. And yet, there is still hope and there is still goodness, even in the midst of destruction, even in the midst of pain, in the midst of suffering. There is hope. There's something we can all cling on to. This whole song is a very hopeful song. Hoping for a life that is not just mediocre, a life that is not just there until we are gone and people start singing our praises after we are gone. But one where we can live in community together and see each other's worth here and now, instead of just waiting until it's far too late. Again, we are called to always ask the question, what is God's purpose for our lives? What is it that we are being called to do? And having faith that wherever God is leading us to go, God will give us the strength to get there. For me, it brought me here. For Drake, it's taken him all over the world to sing songs, to entertain. What's God's purpose for you? With that, may God's blessing be upon you today and every day. May you experience God's purpose in your life. May you enjoy God's blessings each and every day.